Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, along with mutagen fanatic Jake Del Maro, and today we're talking about DDEX 4-2 The Beast, written by Alan Patrick, editors Claire Hoffman, Chris Tulach, and Travis Woodall. This is a 2-hour module for Tier 1 characters tuned for 5 second-level characters. There's expanded directions here to increase the playtime to 4 hours. The module explores the gothic themes of Barovia. Part 1, Arasnau, a sleepy mountain village. The module begins where Suits of the Mists left off just before dawn, entering the city of Arasnau. One shopkeeper, Gregory Horrelbach, has already started his day. After some social interaction, the party discovers that local trappers, one of whom is very pregnant, have gone missing. This is bad news for the town, as without the skins to trade, the traveling merchants may no longer stop in Arasnau, making it very vulnerable to the winter. The party is asked to track down the trappers, Laszlo and Alina Vidura. There is a strong winter storm coming, so time is of the essence. The party can take some time to investigate the town, offering them separate amounts of information for, quote, short or, quote, long investigations. Jake, start us out. Tell us about this introduction here.
Um, you know, this mod actually I really like in terms of follow up from a -1 series to this. It's really interesting. We've maybe not on video with me, but 1-1 we had some relevance there. 2-2 2-1 had Mole Master just being Mole Master. 3-1 Hills Far, you were in like the farms and other and etc. 4-1 we had the Crossing Inn, if I remember correctly.
Crossing Inn, yeah, just
That
outside
kind of
Flame.
just like is now in Barovia or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I do really like how even brought up it's like, hey, out of the mists, you're here now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, I like the fact that this very much seems to be part 2 of the same story. Right?
yes.
It's not another story that's happening in this overall region. It is specifically a follow-up to the first story that played out over 5 different tasks, right?
Even like as like a like I'll use a game analogy. It's like a Skyrim. Like you're going into like you find a small village
Mm-hmm.
and like you are in it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in the capital. You're not in anything like that. You are in a village,
Mm-hmm.
and I really love that. It makes me feel immersed as a player, because it's something that we haven't seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Barovia is like the famous Dracula. You've got that fun background. It's cool. Yeah. It's also super gray. Everything sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Depression.
Yeah, I like the fact that, like, even looking through some of the rest of the early mods in this season, like Arasnau, there's a map for Arasnau in every mod. Yeah. Which tells me that, like, it is a story about this town. It is a story that continues. The fact that 4-1 left off with you entering a small village at just before dawn, and 4-2 picks up with you entering a small village just before dawn, tells me that, like, this story is going to flow module to module instead of just being a series of unrelated one-offs.
And that, I think, and I'll go out to say on 4-2 that this speaks to the fact that I think beyond the fact that Barovia is one of the best-selling books, if not the best-selling book.
I think it's by far the best-selling.
And I can say this through and through, all the way through these mod sets. I haven't played or run through all of them. Is that this is going to be a story that it's going to feel good. Mm-hmm. You're going to have the dramatis persona that's going to be consistent. You're going to have people that make sense. It's not going to be like Mole Master where it's like, oh, who's the high blade today? Mm-hmm. It's going to be something that's going to be completed and it feels good. Yeah. Gregory, when I first jumped into this play setting, I was like, who else is in this town? Mm-hmm. Well, the only places open is the Hare and the Hare. Yeah. And it in and of itself has a page of description, stuff going on, information, and not only that, it actually, I'm kind of happy that looking at this mod, Gregory in his Hair in the Hair shop had more info than the town itself.
Mhm.
And not even in the town. I guess the happenings in the town regarding this mod, which is really neat because like you don't get many situations where it's like, hey, this is how he plays. It's like this is what happens in his shop. He's a fur keeper. He understands that like trade's important,
Mhm.
so he's like a businessman of a sorts. It's nice to see like a more fleshed out NPC, even though he's not like a critical NPC.
Mhm.
He's like just someone that's there that has the capacity to have an exclamation point above his head.
Sure.
And as I was playing through this, it was a genuine character. It wasn't a I hate hating on 3-5 dumb Carl.
Yeah.
But like Gregory
Whirlbach.
Like I don't know, maybe it's just my affinity towards the fact that I think it's an interesting story setting because color outside of the gray is abnormal. And
and
any
I think
kind of life makes it more interesting.
I think one of the strongest things about this module related to that is like it opens up this module and presumably this season in the way that people always recommend you open up any world building exercise, right? You start small and you go from there. And there is nothing smaller than a guy's shop, right? Like it is a single shop. And they do it in a way that doesn't seem arbitrary, right? Like, why is there only one shop open? Well, it's not dawn yet, and he's the only one that wakes up before the sun. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right? And then it progressively leans into other locations in town if your party decides to go that way. Like there are narrative reasons for the limitations. The small setting, it doesn't try to bite off too much. Like you look at Flan and Mulemaster and Hillsfar potentially, and the expectation is these are like not like cities, but definitely like large towns, like regional centers that like lots of things are happening. And you look at the opening in Arras now, and it's like maybe 50 people. Like
that's a hard maybe.
It's super manageable, right?
But
like it's specifically a very small town, desperate for the the trade that they get from the Vistani caravans.
I'll go out on a limb, and we are only however many minutes into recording to say that, like with that just perspective, would say this is a top 25 tier. As in tier 1 mods, I would say it's a top 10.
I think so. I like this mod a lot.
Simply because of the fact that you brought up world building,
Mhm.
not because of oh wow we haven't talked about the rest.
Mhm.
Simply just the intro alone is enough to say, what is the rest of this series going to look like when you're presented with, as a DM, a world building situation that isn't like here's 1,000 pages.
Right.
A term that's brought up, Vistani.
Mhm.
Does it? If you look at the mod, you're gonna do some outside research.
Sure.
But I'm assuming if you're gonna jump into Barovia, you're probably gonna do a little bit of research. I'm not gonna lie. This is Barovia in and of itself, and I've spoken with a few different AL experts, and I mean AL experts. I mean I'm lying here. It's more so friends that have played a lot through these series. That this is the kind of AL where if you run this 1 to whatever, when you're done with this mod series, you actually can just jump into the book to the Castle of Strahd. Like that says a lot. If the AL in accompaniment to the series itself can perform, that means it is something big. We can't say that about Rage Demons. Can't say that about. I mean, let's not lie here. Mulemaster is its own cluster. Like it has, there's places. Rise of Tiamat. They have Horde of the Dragon Queen. It's like almost 2 different organizations. It's like, hey, there's
for sure.
Bring back Tiamat, bring back the make a Dracolich. Like 2 different organizations. Then you have Mulemaster, not even related. They're like in 2 different areas. Then you have Rage Demons, different areas, and like doing their own things.
I will say that
this
this is the first time where like the AL season really feels like it supports the hard book.
You could
which is like fiscally, like in terms of business sense, that's why AL is
oh
around.
whole 100%. If I was not AL, I mean, we're 4 years in, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But if we are talking strictly seasons and how and a place where it can just fit,
Mhm.
holy smokes, DMs. If you're thinking about running this, maybe take a look. I'm gonna say spend $1,000. There's probably a deal going on. I'm actually pretty certain there's like $25 for like 48 hours of content.
Mhm.
Okay, like maybe do that. Read it. You can incorporate this in games. Like there's just a lot of detail that's not seen in the book. Like there's a lot of info in Curse of Strahd.
Sure.
100%. This can be something that like you know what
That's a lot of
I don't.
even if you just spent $25 as a supplement to Barovia to run
Oh,
Curse of
holy
Strahd.
smokes!
Yeah, I
Like
will say that like if you're gonna run this season, you need to be aware that this is not like an all ages season.
oh, 100%.
It is very like there are a lot of adult themes here.
I'll say
There's a
13
lot of
plus
like
at minimum.
there's a lot of gratuitousness in this season. Like there's a very like vivid description of a hanging at the end of this mod potentially. Like there's a lot here that like you're not gonna play with 10-year-olds, and you shouldn't play this with 10-year-olds.
But I think it's important to note knowing your players.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're in. Let's say you're the lucky DM that had just somehow was lucky enough to find 7 active players, 5
Mhm.
active players. You know, I would probably take caution, and that's where as a DM, I definitely say to my players, "Hey, I'm gonna bring up some topics and highlight some topics that are going on.
Mhm.
Are you cool with this? If not, let's say you're in a streaming setting, you're just like, nope, nope,
Yeah.
nope. You need to make that clear." And
Mhm.
I 100% agree with Brian on that because there's just there's the descriptions unfortunately get lost on topics, as Brian said, that are just like aggressive.
Mhm.
But it shows the like Salem kind of like witch
Mhm.
hunt esque kind of like beliefs, the really bad,
Yeah.
the gory, gross. And Barovia is just it's inspiration for a lot of the AL admins, even their separate games,
Their AOs and stuff. Yeah.
because there's so much content, there's so much like deviation from the
Mhm.
norm. It makes it where that deviation from the norm becomes the regular, and
Yeah, and
when
it's
you're confronted with it, it becomes like, whoa.
yeah, and it's nice because it's like an isolated setting, right? Like
Yes.
it's tough in the rest of AL because you have to consider all of the Forgotten Realms,
Yes.
right? To some degree, right? Barovia is nice because like what does Waterdeep think about this? Waterdeep doesn't think about this. Like it's not that Waterdeep's not here.
It's a
Like
nightmare of Waterdeep,
mhm,
and it's a passing and fleeting moment.
mhm,
There's other things going on,
yeah.
and I absolutely love it.
Mhm,
It will probably, and I've never run through season 4. I've played through part of season 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 eventually. This content is such a unique experience. And once again, we're only in part 1
right.
of this.
Yeah.
It just do your research.
The
Make it feel like the worst thing, the nightmare that you do not want to be here.
mhm,
The Sin City of AL mods.
mhm,
Like this is the set.
yeah.
This is it. Do it.
And the benefit here is like the narrative flows so nicely that it feels like you just pick up, like this lends itself more to like a consistent table than drop in players
Or even book play.
or book play. Yeah, I mean like, and I would expect that you see similar things. We haven't messed around with the Eberron stuff at all. My expectation is you will see similar like narrative flow in the Eberron series because it's all one author.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that because we haven't touched it yet. Like at some point maybe we will, but Um, this module, like, just from 4-2, right? This is the second module in the season. I'm already excited because narratively I'm hooked. Because narratively there's a connection to the prior module that gives me the expectation that there will be connections further on. Like, I'm just already involved, already excited about this small village that is um, haunted by so many things, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to move forward in the season because of it.
So I guess we probably should address the actual mod itself and not
Oh
the
yeah, 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 yeah.
concept.
So part two, over the river and through the woods. As the party makes their way to the trapper's typical campsite, they stumble upon one of the random encounters listed in Arasnau and its surrounds. After navigating that combat or exploration encounter, the party finds the Vidura campsite, where it is clear that there was a struggle and Laszlo is very, very dead. After investigating the campsite, elves from Greenhall that have been brought to Barovia through the mists as well come out of the forest with Ava Glenmere. They saw the fight and may be willing to fill the party in based off a brief role playing encounter. With the information from the campsite, the party heads further into the woods to find the beast that killed Laszlo. Deeper in the woods, the party faces another randomly selected encounter from the Deep Wilderness table. So, one thing is, like, these random encounters um, might be both the biggest strength and biggest weakness of this module. They're not all as well put together. Um, this part is where this module goes potentially from 2 to 4 hours by just kind of like adding in more random encounters. I don't love that as a way to like extend a module. It seems kind of artificial. Um, but the encounters are interesting, right? Some of them are very interesting. Like there's a tree that's grown through a Vistani cart. That's cool. There's spooky like voices and ghosts. That's cool. There's weird encounters with like bears that are dead and full of like parasites. Um, all of these things further set this like gothic tone of season 4 and specifically this module.
Yeah, you know, the one thing I really do like about this mod is that it's clear as a DM what I'm going to be presenting to the party.
Mhm.
There's clear, and he will, at roll tables, I'm gonna say they can throw them out. Throw them out. I can get like an animation for throwing them out. Roll tables are dumb.
Yeah.
I do think they're dumb because there's clearly to me certain things that you should be showing your party.
Sure.
Um, I I don't know. It's like this does not belong here. That's one that should instantly be in that roll table. If you do not show that, I'm gonna say it. I'm getting up.
He's getting
I'm
up.
gonna stretch.
He's stretching.
Don't be a DM if you don't understand that. And that's because there's so much info there. There's so much good, just groundbreaking things. And if I'll fight them. If as a DM I showed up at your table and I knowingly have played in this mod and you throw a splash of Bloodhawks at me but don't throw
Of a Sonic
this
card.
does not belong here,
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably write something really poorly towards you and say, you know what, I know this mod and unfortunately you didn't do it justice. It's like there's certain things here that do make sense, and as Brian has stated, making mods longer because you're adding random dice rolls to the equation, I don't think that's right. There should be certain things that should exist, period. I'm not saying it's not a bad mod. I'm just saying this is more of a DM discretion kind of thing.
I think these tables are the biggest weakness of this mod insofar as like they feel like somebody was trying to write a mod that was 2 hours that could be 4 hours.
I'd rather just say 2 hours, maybe 3 hours.
Just call it a 2 hour mod. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the table choices like are there if you need to fill, like the splash of Bloodhawks is there if you need to fill 2 more hours. Like,
but there shouldn't be options for certain things. Like you can get an item that, once again, it's not a magic item, it's just a cursed item. But like that's something that should 100% be there. And it also draws the fact of why I like Barovia so much, because you're sitting here going in, what is that movie that's the one where it's everything's gray until something happens? I don't remember it.
What's it called? Pleasantville.
Pleasantville. It's kind of whatever that emotion is.
Sure,
Whatever.
whatever it is. Yeah.
Whatever that is. But like, the thing is everything's gray, everything's dark. There's literally a snowstorm coming, and then you have this like
Vibrant
Barnum and
cart
Bailey's like cart showing up. If that's not in your play style, sorry, you're getting a bad review from me.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, like, here's the thing: if you're a new DM and you overlook it, maybe if you're not super familiar with this and you overlook it, maybe I would say, like, in terms of these charts, don't prep all of them. If you're going to run a 2-hour version of this mod, pick the ones you're going to run. Run a couple, pick the ones ahead of time. Don't worry about like, oh, I need to prep all 6 of these for both tables. Prep the ones you want to run.
Only prep one.
Prep one, maybe 2. I think for a 2-hour session, even for the 2-hour session, I prepped 2 and like incorporated them in together. Right, like it's fine.
Well, well, the one I'm always gonna say is the one with the "This does not belong here." For us, you ran was a couple different of them, but mushed together. It was a Stirs, and no, it was
that one. And
We're Not Alone.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 that you should just put together.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this. I'm going to actively try, in not only my season 3 series but my season 4 series, is I don't like combat. Combat's boring to me because it's a time. Of course, you can play and flex, cool, all. I get it. People like playing combat. It's fun every so often. But like in tier 1 play, to me, I just want to like not do it because
in tier 1 you don't have the resources to make combat fun. Like that's the bottom line. Like you don't have the resources to be successful enough to feel rewarded at the end.
So like I'd rather just spend my time in a social encounter and annoying my players or my DM and saying, how can I get out of this? Because that to me is more interesting. And I'm not playing a charisma, I'm playing a druid. Like if anything, this is the most interesting thing to me. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I want things that will build my character, that will, unless it's something super cool where like I get a cool streak of lightning blonde hair when I switch into a werebadger or a bad bat. Like I'm not gonna get any of that.
Right.
But like, there, like the cart and We're Not Alone 2 should be instantly like thought of, because it's not combat, which, you know, once again, and I'm in the bias of not combat over combat. It's just, it makes more sense to me because I think it builds your character. It's like if something sticks with your character, they roll really poorly on a table, and now it's like they can only think of like kids in an orphanage.
Yeah.
And next time they encounter a kid, they're like, "Are you okay?" But I guess that's maybe just a hope of mine from either super new players and experienced players, but more on the experience, like not in the middle. It's like super new players will be like, "Oh, orphanage." Super experienced players will be like, "Oh, orphanage." Everyone in between might be like, whatever. But like, at least as a DM or as even a player, I'd be like, "Didn't you have an encounter with a kid that, you know, might make you more or less change your decision here?" I guess I just am looking into times when I don't play D&D that I want to look into this stuff.
Sure.
And I don't care for combat with Bloodhawks.
It just seems like combat for the sake of adding combat. And I think like anytime you're going to do that, it just feels
like the Stirs in the Thicket, I think is an interesting combat. Do I think it's appropriate? No.
Sure.
Do I think it's fitting for the setting? Yes, Queen, yes. I absolutely believe it is. It's just, I don't think I'd run it.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's appropriate. I just don't, like...
It's not the best option.
Exactly.
For sure.
You've got it exactly right, Brian.
You want to give your players reasons to take things away from the mod. And like fighting some more blights when they fought blights in 4-1, it's just not going to do it.
Like I like how it's set up. I like even the description. And once again, even to our, you know, to our editors and our team, you know, I would say specifically Alan Patrick, I like the combats.
Sure.
I mean, maybe not Bloodhawk. I've got a resentment towards Bloodhawks. I think they're the silliest creature in the world. But how he sets up the blights, they make sense. I think you could honestly take that copy, Control C, Control V into any mod, and it's actually a really good combat. I just if this is my audition into 4-2 or into drawing my players in, I don't want to hit them with combat.
Not not a ton of combat, like not in tier 1. Like there's it's tough. Like if you're in a position where you need to make this a 4-hour mod,
do it.
But I don't know why you would be in that position, right? I can't come up with it unless you're like at a con and they're like, we need a 4-hour mod run here. Will you run? But like, frankly, like if you're a new DM, no con organizer is going to come up to you and be like, we need a 4-hour run.
To the beast.
Well, yeah, I mean, like it seems so embedded in the season that like it's not going to come up. Like old content is not run at cons. It's not like old content insofar as like old seasonal content.
Anything beyond 2 seasons old is probably not being run. And even then, that's probably pretty late.
Unless it's our convention, at which point we'll run season 1 all day long.
Yeah, if you want that, let me know. I will actually run this mod for you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Check out our Patreon. We'll come up with some sort of options.
Email me directly and tell me where you found this. I will run this for you, and I'm going to tell you I'm not running Bloodhawks.
Right. Anyway, I don't know. I think there's a lot of like solid encounters here. I just don't think they're all necessary. I think stretching this to a 4-hour mod is ancillary and not really needed.
I'd rather them say 2-hour mod, but it can go 3 hours.
Yeah.
If your players are invested and they're not hucking dice, and I don't like saying that because it sounds, but if they're not just coming here for combat and they actually really want to enjoy and immerse themselves, I'm gonna do my extra 2 hours of reading here to go and do the extra stuff to make it so this town is alive as much as it's dead. Like
there is a supplemental piece of material like outlining Erasnau and really like leaning in and providing a lot of information for the whole season. I wish, frankly, that they did that for all of the seasons. Part 3, the Wolf's Den. The party makes its way to a mouth of what appears to be a large wolf's cave just as a strong winter storm opens up over the region. In the cave, they find a journal belonging to Alina, identifying her as Laszlo's killer while trying to fight him off and defend her unborn child. She and a dire wolf attack the party. If the party spares Alina, she is despondent, having given her child a wolf pup to a merchant in Erasnau. If taken to town, she admits to her wrongdoing as well as what she is and is hanged for being cursed by the moon. This is a rough...
Wait. How do you feel about it? Because you ran this and, the clear conclusion was not what was highlighted in the mod.
Sure, so... The mod never provides the option that she wants to get her child back and just take care of her child, right? So, like, either she never comes back to town and this wolf pup is left in town, or she goes back and is hanged.
Aggressively and graphically.
In graphic detail, right?
Yeah.
And I think,
I do believe, once again, I would even check in with your players again, like if they're not emotionally okay for this, where it's she falls off a chair, and she's not, but like it's like the neck snaps and you can hear it, and it's like
it's aggressive, yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a very like straightforward execution. I think it is like telltale of why this season should not be played for everyone. I think the fact that like the notion that like she wants to take care of her kid is never brought up is probably an oversight. It's probably a blind spot. There are a bunch of reasons this could be the case. Maybe she just like, maybe there's something about the mists that is making things worse in the region, and like she doesn't trust herself to take care of the child. It's frustrating here because in the beginning of this mod, Alan Patrick sets up the DM with the like before the mod information that Laszlo is aware of her curse, right? Like
It is really cool.
yeah, it specifically sets up the fact that like Laszlo saw her change and is fine with it, and then abruptly shifts to Laszlo finds out that she's cursed and tries to kill her. Tries to
Like, and
kill
he's
her
super cool with
and
it.
her child,
Like, yeah, he's like super cool. He's like, yeah, it's fine.
and then
And
like is real upset all of a sudden, right? And
but
so
I'll even go a step further. I'm super, super, super confused with the child being a wolf because
yeah,
because Brian, you did a lot of liberties here. The thing is like it does not, and even we were in the players, and if you check out our Patreon,
Mhm.
but you'll see the playthrough of it where we've had situations where even other DMs that are playing in our game have never had a situation where they haven't said, hey, please don't go kill yourself in the town, like,
Right. Like
situations
maybe
like
we
that.
can just get your kid back for you, and you can
Yeah, we'll
just run
just go
off into the
steal the
woods and be fine.
dog. But
Like,
which has always confused me, or always, I would say it has confused me thus far because, um, is that like, how does this pup stay a pup? And like Brian, you said,
yeah,
well, as long as it doesn't, because there was an info guided in here, and I see this as and I'll talk about her journal in a second.
mhm.
But like you kind of went through and said, as long as they don't know that they're a werewolf, they don't become a werewolf. But what kind of info does a DM get shortchanged here, where they expected her to either just f off
Yeah.
or like kill herself? Like there was no middle ground.
I am particularly surprised with that, given that this is an Alan Patrick mod, because
Alan
generally
is
he is
very
so
good about
over
this.
detailed. Where I read his stuff and I'm like, I didn't need to read that 30 pages. That's never going to come up because
And then
there's
it comes
so
up.
much guidance. So to have this like blind spot is pretty huge. And
Aggressive blind spot.
yeah,
And I think that was a really surprise to me because it was like, I mean, I thought it was funny because I think it's gonna be but you made it now a point in our game where it is now, oh, you didn't know you're a werewolf, and it's like, oh no, ooh, now you're a werewolf, and like
right.
that's gonna be something that's gonna come up kind of funnily as a joke, but that's something that's also memorable as a player because of oversight of an author. You have made an experience for a player that wasn't expected to see.
Sure.
And
And DMing
even
is
though
about making choices, right? Like it's
yeah,
about making things fit even if they don't. And I think like this oversight gives DMs that opportunity. I think it's
it'd be a shame to have something where it gets to the point of her killing herself, or not kill
not
someone
killing
killing
herself,
her.
being
She
executed.
was pretty much martyring herself, but she ends up killing herself because she decided to turn to town when she could just not.
Yeah, and like you could make an argument to me that like she wants to die or something, maybe it's suicide. Like I don't know that those are better arguments though.
That's
Right?
no longer
Like
PG-13. If you wanted to
right.
make it PG-13, you've now have reduced that argument to make it even worse.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people should go and do XYZ, but like realistically, we're all here for life,
Mm-hmm.
and NPCs apparently don't know about rebirth and all these things about like bringing them back to life.
Right.
But it's still, I want to come back to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Player handouts, and I'm totally just veering off topic.
Sure.
I can appreciate whoever felt necessary to write in this player handout
Mm-hmm.
the Alina's journal.
Mm-hmm.
I think it means a lot to have a meaningful player handout where it was like it was her handwriting,
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was something that was just like so, it felt good to read because it was something unique. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
typed out like some crazy psychopath who was like taping letters out of things here. It felt unique,
Yeah.
it felt good, and I do appreciate that. And I think that player handouts are so important, especially if you were to do this, and if you were a DM that was like, I printed out 7 copies and then spent 7 staples as I cut this out and stapled it into everyone. Let's be real here. 2016 version of Jake probably would have done that as a psychopath as he was, because he loved AL
Sure.
and D&D the point. Well, the thing is I can still do that by handing out 7 pieces of paper.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice touch.
Yep.
And not necessarily reading out to your players, but also having the difficulty of reading somebody else's handwriting. Not everyone writes out in print in Times New Roman 12.
Yeah.
No one does that.
Yeah.
And I think it was a very cool touch.
It's a nice handout for sure. Yeah. They don't come up often, so.
It's a small thing, but we haven't really seen it in the last 3 seasons.
No, when journals come up, it's like typed out journals
and I think that really accentuates the point where I'm excited to play in season 4, read season 4, because it's like it is literally going to a desolate area and finding a person who's controlled it because he's a shockers vampire.
Right.
But it's really does speak to the fact that it felt like this one was like a mom's home cooking versus like you were trying to make it in some not Gordon Ramsay kitchen.
Right.
Like it feels nice. So I will say that. And then also Brian, as you were running the mod, you made a really cool point to during our final combat with Lena, that we said we're not trying to hurt you, we're just trying to figure out like what's going on, and we actively disengaged and made it not like a drawn out knockout combat. It was nice because it was like, hey, we're just like, we want to help you, and like, hey, let's get your son. And you did a skill challenge, and I know you like skill challenges as much as anyone else, but to get back her son, and I think that's a really, really big part of what makes this mod like feel whole. Like, it felt good to hear like, hey, we're actually gonna deviate from the path of the most extremes and go in the middle, and like, hey, let's reunite her with her pup, and make it so she is back with him, and she can do whatever the heck you want. And you know what? Actually, if you're going to be in this town, you now have a contact.
Yeah.
Because you ended up not having her jump off a roof and just snap her neck. You now have a mother that is happy with her son, and you have a potential contact that is her.
And there's a potential contact that's not in town that might have other information, those kinds of things. Maybe there could be an argument to be made that like the goal of ending this module is to not give you that sense of closure, right? Like maybe it's I haven't read through the next module. Maybe like the hope is that you feel uneasy going into the next module. I don't know that that's super valuable.
It is as a player though, knowing that I did something right in the region that is so wrong. Like that I think is the biggest takeaway for me, was just simply knowing that I did a small right, or I felt what is right, not knowing what's coming up next, which made it so much more impactful, because it's like, you know what, even if this person doesn't come back up again, and I mean, I've read a couple of the mods where deaths happen, things happen, but keeping this mother here, whatever limited information she has, or maybe she just says, hey, by the way, there's a storm coming, even if there isn't, whatever it is, she could be a potential value add. And I think that's just like so unconcentrated upon. And I'll say this, unfortunately, about the past 3 seasons, there's a lot less of that going on, and this is much more of like a community-based effort, which speaks to the fact of why I'm so heavily invested in why, Barovia is a cool series. It speaks to that fact. It makes it makes me naturally want to be attached to said characters.
For sure.
I think it's neat.
So there it is, DDX 4-2 The Beast. Thank you so much for listening. Some advice to streamline it at your tables. Be a good neighbor. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe. Toll the Dead for notifications. Check out our Patreon where you can see the playthroughs for these mods. as we play them to prepare for these videos. You can see those at the $5 tier. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and from now until the next time, roll together.